right, so I'm gonna have everybody join me upstairs. I'm gonna steal one of those mics to get to this side over here. All right, so you guys have a seat. You're good there. Eduardo, here you go.
Thanks.
All right, so now, as promised, we got some time for questions. No, it's not. That's not all. There it is. That's the one I wanted. So we'll do some questions here from the audience, and just while you guys are thinking of questions, go ahead and just shoot a hand up, and I think we'll probably have a runner with a mic, which we do. So I'll get us started. We heard kind of how you came across your projects, and we heard your challenges. So I'm just going to throw it over there. What were some of the challenges that you guys encountered in your app?
Well, for me, it was the same as my friends over here. That Firebase was doing a bunch of stuff while we are finishing everything up together and so everything exploded in the last day of class, and I was Jesus.
Yeah, those emails come to me. Yes.
For us, our main problem, honestly, was documentation. Like, it ended up taking us 2 weeks just to get, if you saw all the flights to load up, that was such a problem just with either APIs being completely just killed off, like the day we were going to implement them, or just no one telling us how it actually works and us having to go in and figure it out ourselves.
So on that topic, API for people that are joining us, API is an interface with data from somewhere else, right? It could be a provider, government, whatever, you know, and that's where a lot of your information comes from. So how many different APIs did you guys use in your application? So I know Eduardo used Firebase. Adam, you had a couple others that you used, right?
We ended up using Foursquare for a lot of the events. We used a little bit of Yahoo. I know the translation was actually an API pull for both recognizing what language you're speaking in as well as translating it. I know, as I said, airport or actually finding the flights was an API. I believe the directions was also another pull. So pretty much almost everything we did involved us pulling information from somewhere else.
And over here?
For us, we ended up using 2 APIs. We ended up using Firebase as well for all our backend stuff. And then we use Zillow to pull our home information right now because we're waiting on MLS access, all the legal stuff that we have to go through to gain access to it.
Sure, and I'm sure that's a challenge too. Like I know, Adam, you said, API went down like as you're about ready to use it, or Firebase changes in the middle of development. So I know, like with you guys were originally planning on using MLS, and at some point had to roll back to Zillow, right? Yes. So what is that process like when you have identified the need for something, and this goes to all of you, when you've identified the need for something in an application, you know that there's a feature that needs to be built, and you're in that kind of discovery or rediscovery in some cases phase to try and find out where that information is coming from.
Like how do I go about handling that?
Yeah.
Like for instance, we wanted to use the MLS access, and initially found out that was going to cost us a decent amount of money for us broke people over here.
Which Adam pointed out you don't have.
Yes, exactly. So we had to come up with a solution because we really liked this idea and we wanted to stick with it. So we decided to use one of those third-party APIs, Zillow, to pull down our information, but coming with that, I had to make an XML parser, which I had never done before. So I know in doing that, I learned something new. But it's a hassle trying to work around unexpected changes.
Over there.
Honestly, what we tried to do was just try to find as many APIs as we could pull, so that way if one did break, we had a spare. And if we didn't have a spare, we kind of just scrambled as quickly as we could. It sounds a little awful, but unfortunately it had to be done where we just kind of scrambled to quickly get it fixed as quickly as possible, sorry.
So one follow-up for Adam, because my next question is for you, Eduardo. So how does that change how you go about actually architecting your application when you know you're going to get data from somewhere else, but you're not quite sure where that's coming from?
We tried to make as many helper files as we could, so that way it's as easy as kind of just taking one thing and just putting it into another. Like I believe for every single API pull we had just a basic API pull. So we pulled multiple times from Escape, but it was multiple different pulls. So we just had one basic helper file. So we tried to make it as easy to morph it into anything we needed as possible. And if something wasn't morphed, we tried to either make something that could be, just in case for the future, or just we knew that we had enough knowledge at least to quickly change something and make it work.
Sure. And then this question is actually for Eduardo, but it's based on something that you said. You know, you learned something new. So Eduardo, I was picking on him a little bit earlier. Real big fan of Microsoft.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not, and I'm the boss, so he didn't get to do it while he was a student here. But so Eduardo, I know you're really passionate about Microsoft. I'm just curious, and I've never asked him this. Like, full disclosure, I have no idea what he's about to say. I'm kind of terrified. So you're about to graduate. You're about to walk across the stage. Even though you didn't really get a ton of time to work in Microsoft products while here in the program, how do you feel about going forward if you wanted to then pick that up based on what you did get exposure to here in the program?
Well, the program teaches you the best of Android and Apple, and the best part is that the way that they teach you here at Fulsa, you can pick up whatever language you want and just read the documentation, and that's it. For my application that I just show you guys, I told my teacher, well, I have all the UI set up for Windows, but I couldn't show you guys because it wasn't ready.
Sure. So you're actually going to take your application and make it work on Windows then?
Yeah, I'm gonna make it on, because I know that Windows doesn't have in the mobile side. I know that they don't have any market share. They have 0.2. That is kind of awful. But we have to see the big picture. That is Windows Universal Application. So these are applications that will scale in whatever platform you are running. You are running on a Surface, on a phone, on an Xbox, or whatever.
Sure. Excellent. That answer went well. I'm glad. I was kind of scared. Well, I was really sweating that. I'm not going to lie. All right. So throw it over to the audience. What kind of questions do we have coming from there? I know we got a couple students. We got a couple family members here. Yeah, right here in the middle.
Hi, my name's Sway. I was very, very impressed. Very, very cool apps. What was your approach to? Because there was a lot that you had to do from start to finish. So you had to do the design, mock-ups, the user experience. Did you do agile? So how did you go from idea to engaging and knowing you were building the right thing? And then how did you prioritize and build out till you got to the end with designs and stuff like that?
And I'm going to tag on to that question. So in addition to that, because part of that process is like you said, working with the clients, which by the way, when they're about nothing, the clients, that's us, right? So so how do you deal with client changes that we also throw on after your initial idea?
So when we first started this idea, it was a lot of documentation, a lot of pre-planning, a lot of research, demographic information. Make sure it's even the right platform that you're going to be going into, and you have to argue that point. We chose Android alone for the research of that we got with more people using Android in the real estate business. So it was just a lot of legwork, that busy work that nobody wants to do. You just got to get out and get it done. And we broke things down. We used Trello. It's another tool that we used. The whole class used it, actually. And we broke down waterfall sprints. So we had, what we needed to get done for alpha, beta, our release candidate, and then our gold. And we were able to, our clients, our professors, we were able to sit down with them weekly after we've gone through our stand-up, and they could see where we were sitting with our sprints, and we could make pivots from that point. And that was really helpful, making those pivot changes. Sometimes there's a feature that we found that we never would have used. And so they were okay with us removing something, but something got added. So it's that give and take. And you just got to be willing to, it's kind of the name of the game. Your clients are always going to come at you and say, well, I thought it was going to be like this. And if you want to get paid, you either do it or you go to a different client. So, we're kind of in that mindset of, just quick adaptation. And we do things in Agile. We do waterfall sprints, so we were doing them weekly. Like you said, we had 8 weeks, and about 5 of it was development. The other 3 was all research. So it's just a lot of pivot points.
Right.
Also, a lot of initial setup. Even during the documentation phase, I personally knew it would have been a good idea to start programming then, even if it wasn't what we were exactly working on, just working on what I was going to be working with. So the XML parser, I had never done that before, and it was kind of a monster going into it. But I figured it out, and we started setting up skeleton classes. Like, we might need these, so we're going to put these here just in case. And that's just what we did, and it ended up helping us a lot when it actually came to coding time, because it was all laid out, and we could just plug and play from what we needed. But yeah.
Adam?
The way AJ and I ended up doing it was the moment our idea was actually approved, we were just like, okay, so you're going to do this, you're going to do this. And we basically ended up dividing it where AJ did design and I ended up doing a lot of the functionality. And as for any additions that you guys wanted to add onto, we were just kind of like, okay. We just took it on the chin and we're like, okay. Like, I know the biggest one was right near the end, we kind of realized, like, what if someone wants to just drive? Like, not everyone's going to fly. And that completely messed up our whole flow. So AJ and I were just kind of like, we're not going to be able to get out of this, so we might as well just try to fix it. So I think we stayed up all night that night trying to fix it, and so we just kind of took the punches.
Eduardo?
Well, for me, it was kind of an interesting story because the app that I had planned for the final project, it wasn't the actual app that I showed you guys. The app that I had in mind was an app for the Apple Watch that integrates that you could take your blood and you could take the blood pressure and send all the data to the doctor, but it was too complicated for the 8 weeks that we have to develop the app. So then my teacher Yen told me, hey, why we don't do this idea? And I was, okay, this idea is kind of cool. So I was okay, let me do a bunch of research, and I'm very bad with flow, so she helped me a lot with the flow of the app. So I made the app in the time constraint that I had.
Yeah, because you actually had even gotten Apple to give you an Apple Watch to start development on this,
Yeah.
right? And then
Yeah.
and I think that that's an interesting thing is that we find out sometimes, like a student, and we actually had initially, I think, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we approved that app, right? We're like, oh yeah, it's a really cool idea, but back to your question, like you find out real early on, it's like, yeah, this is more than 6 weeks, so you have to kind of be a little bit flexible there. Great question. So we got a question over here and also a question in the back.
This one's for Escape.
Wait. Yeah, we need a mic because people are watching, man. They can't hear you.
This one's for...
We need the mic to work. They're going to level it.
I think they're telling you something.
All right, I'll tell you what.
Okay. Anyway, so this one's for Escape. Congratulations on successful translation, because that's very hard. The localization, did you guys do any localization for other than English, or did just the translation?
The only thing that we could really think of, since it is only domestic, was we just basically take whatever you speak and it actually says it in English. It actually the phone will say it, and it'll open up a little text. It'll actually write it out as well.
Cool. And then the other part was, how does the price sharing work? I saw that briefly, but I didn't really see how that would work between, like when you sign up and you say, hey, I want to go do this, does it pick randomly from people? Do you schedule it only with other people you know? How is the rest of that kind of plan to work?
How does the pricing work for the flights?
I saw it on there. It said price sharing. So you say, okay, you want to go on a trip and you only have so much money, so you kind of pool it with other people. Was that kind of what I was seeing, or?
Oh no, I'm sorry. That might have been an issue with my slides. It was we offer sharing where you can share like photos that you take on there, but you can also pick pricing. But the way our pricing works is we kind of just grab flights, and we give a little bit of leeway. I think it's $50 between what you actually say. Sorry about that.
Cool. And then we had a question in the back. Got a mic. Okay.
So this question is mostly for Adam, just because of the number of APIs you used, but also for Buddy and Ryan, just because you used like a main single API. That was kind of curious to the differences here. So I know in the program you guys learn how to use APIs, like the bare bones way of how to do it, like the Android default way of doing things. But I'm curious, mainly because I actually made the suggestion to AJ halfway through your project. If you guys use anything like OKHTTP or retrofit to kind of cut down the time it takes to do those calls, or did you just rough it out the hard way?
I actually did not. AJ did not tell me that he was told that, so I'm just hearing this for the first time. As far as I know, I just did the generic, just Android pull because that was quick and easy, and he didn't really want to mess with anything that I did because we had it working. I'm gonna have to talk to him about that, I guess, though.
For us, we did it the old-fashioned way. We did it the Android way. But what's funny is I had never heard about those. But when I was in my interview the other day, I got asked about REST. And they had asked if I had ever used it and if I was interested in learning it. So my answer was yes. So that's something that we will look for going forward and using it. Another tool to put under our belt.
Cool. I think we have a question from online over here.
Hi, how are you? It's a question for Buddy and Ryan. Does your app have the ability to allow the user to enter a house that they might see while they are driving around that is not one of the agent's listings?
No. We wanted all the listings involved with the user and the company itself to be purely what the agent decided to put in. We didn't want the users to be able to go and search just like every other third-party service that's out there. We want direct link to your agent. Like, we know what you want. Here's this listing. We know you like this. But the idea for this was so that a company or somebody like Century 21 or Remax would pick it up and all of their listings would be in there. So yeah, you would be driving around seeing other listings. But, if your agent is with Century 21 or Remax, you would only have theirs.
Also with that, like we had said, our original idea was with the MLS. And so with the MLS, you have a little bit more freedom. You can see other agents' listings as long as you give them credit and list that. And that becomes the legal issue with having the MLS is if you don't get credit, now you can be sued for basically poaching their stuff. And there's a lot of legal documentation that goes with MLSs in real estate that we were unaware of when we created this idea. And we learned very quickly. So with the MLS going forward, yes, that's something you would see. You would see anything that's within an MLS listing for the local MLS. But currently as built, no, you do not.
A lot of hands. Okay. I'm going to let the runner choose. Go ahead.
This question's for the real estate guys. So you have these two separate apps for the agent and the client. Were you able to reuse any of your classes or any of the code between these two separate applications?
Yes, mostly I would say the helper files. Like we use a lot of helper files, whether it's for our real-time database with Firebase or our Firebase storage or even input validation or our geofencing. Like we try to make everything as modular as possible. So functionality-wise, like the geofencing and all the database calls and all that, most of that was able to carry over. The main differences I would say would be flow, but yeah, we definitely reuse a lot of our code.
Cool. Yep, in the back.
This goes to the real estate app again. Two questions. Number one is, how do you expect to make money off of the app? And two is, If I'm not mistaken, most real estate agents in the nation are independent contractors. So you could, day one, have every real estate agent using your app instead of pigeonholing yourself into one company. So I'm wondering the thought process behind that.
So the thought process behind it is right now we do not currently have a go-to-market plan for this without the MLS. That was never the idea. So we are currently working with some real estate agents right now and a company that is going to be giving us their IDX. We're going through the legal preparations for that. And once we have that IDX going forward, this wouldn't be a whitewash. The grand idea was to get rid of those third-party sites. Since, like you said, agents are independent contractors, they're paying $300 to $500 to use these online tools, especially with, I'm trying not to drop any names, but especially with using certain premier packages with these sites. And so that's definitely what we would like to do. We would like to do a subscription-based for the agent, keep it free for the user, and it would be a fraction of what they cost. We're looking at probably anywhere from $30 to $50 based on what they currently spend, $3 to $5 a month, $300 to $500 a month. So that's currently, we're trying to undercut them by, almost 90%, and give everybody what they want at a lower cost price and giving it the same, way that the competitors are.
Hello.
Yep.
This question's for Eduardo. It's more specifically to do with your white labeling process. Like, how would you go and hand this off to a company to then prepare their application for their own brand? And then also, on top of that, have you started looking for companies to possibly take your process and relabel it and rebrand it and use it for their own product?
That is a great question. Well, my application is a white label, but the way that it's set up right now is more, I focus on pools, but I will have to reconstruct it, to do a little bit of reconstructing the Firebase console, to do to change the application completely of what the user needs. So it's basically a template for everything. But definitely we have to do some reconstructing of the application.
So to clarify, that would be if you had a different client or whatever that wanted to use it, you would basically rebrand it and repackage it for a different app ID.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Good question. How are we doing out there? We have more questions? No? Quiet? Oh, yeah, we have another one here? You have another question? Yeah, we got another question right here in the middle.
More of a general question. Usually you land in one camp or the other, Android or iOS. And I think all of them were Android. So where are you landing? And from that experience, because you're probably not going to do both apps if you work for a company.
Uh,
Yeah. So we have one vote for Windows Phone.
Well, we are not going to make obviously both applications on both operating system. But nowadays we have like Xamarin Studio where you can build your application for the three platforms that we have correctly, and you can also build natively. You can use Android Studio, Swift, and Visual Studio to build your applications.
All right. So between iOS and Android only, where are you falling right now? Which one do you think you like better?
Android. I hated Android at first, but since Swift always break things, I go with Android.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to step in at that because I think you made an astute observation, sir. Yeah, they all did Android, but this group of graduates especially went through a very tumultuous time with the iOS rollout, and that Swift is still maturing, or had been when they were going through it. So a lot of updates between Swift 1, 2, and 3, kind of back to back to back between when they first got exposed to it and then their final project and everything like that. So I think that might have something to factor in, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but go ahead.
It definitely did, for me at least. I choose Android over the two, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to just let my Apple knowledge decrease or just not going to touch it anymore. I am going to try to at least stay knowledgeable and at least know how to do it just in case, because that only helps me in the long run. But if I had to choose, it would be Android.
If you got a job offer, and this is going to be a follow-up question, so you guys can chime in. If you got a job offer tomorrow for an iOS developer, though, you'd take it, I presume.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I just don't want anybody that's watching to like write this off. You know, it's like these guys.
If it's a job, I'll take it. Yeah.
I think I can speak for Buddy and I that we both love Android.
Yeah. But like Josh was saying, the company that I'm looking at right now, they want to hire me as an iOS and an Android. I'd be flopping to and from projects, so I have to stay knowledgeable in my Swift, which I have. It's a pain in the butt to try to do when you're trying to learn new Android stuff, especially while going through Android. And like Eduardo said, we all hated it. But once we understood it, and we saw like the power and the strength that we had with it, we loved it. And we haven't wanted to develop for anything else besides it until we needed to. And that's kind of where we're at in a side project now, is we have to use it. And so we got to keep that knowledge base up if we want to do our own thing.
Yeah, and for people that are watching that aren't involved with the school, one of the things that we do offer here is auditing of courses for our grads. So especially in a program like mobile, once you graduate, and this is something I think is a unique kind of selling proposition for what we have here, is once you graduate as a student, you know, like these guys will be tomorrow, say Swift 4 does come out tomorrow, they're always able to come back and go through those courses again to get a refresher. Or if you take a job as an Android developer, and you're there for, you know, several years, and then you're going to get hired somewhere else or change it over into an iOS position, you could come back and refresh your skills and those things, and that's offered to all of our grads. So, you know, I think that's something that I should highlight here at this point, especially with this program. Actually, I think you had expressed interest to me to even go back through and pick up on some of the C# stuff that we've introduced that you didn't get initially. So actually, Eduardo's already talked to me about kind of taking advantage of that, like right out the gate. And yeah, he's already talked to Jamie about iOS. So I was like, we got some of that lined up already. So that's good. We good online? We have a question on there? Yeah. Okay.
This is a question for all performers. Did you use any frameworks or wanted to, but found it easier to just build everything yourself?
Buddy and I personally like to figure out how to build it on our own. You know, we used to use a lot of them, but like on this last project, I even made a custom image view that does threading and image caching and all that. But like he does a floating action menu that isn't supported anymore, and he is personally going to take up. But yeah, when it comes down to it, we personally like making our own stuff. It helps us learn and become better developers.
Well, I only use for this particular project, I use a library called Glide. That is like a smart image view that manage all the caching and is well download. You just throw the URL and hey, we have an image over here. So that is the only thing I use, but I like to build my own stuff. Because as Barry said, as Ryan said, we like to have more control of what we are doing, and we like to be better developers.
We used a lot. Basically, the floating action buttons, the little animations were a lot of it was design stuff. I actually think all of them were designed. The challenge little stars popping in and out, that was actually used from a framework. We just felt like they looked really good, and we wanted to use them to make our app look really good.
Also, I should mention we're not a design program. For anybody that's watching this and like thinking, gee, I might want. These are developers. They code stuff, and we have a designer instructor that does what she can, but these poor bastards can't design anything. Like, these slides, when I first got them, were gross. I had so much work to do, but the apps work, and that's what matters. So yeah, it's good though. I mean, you got to focus on something. I think if you look at the schedule, you look at that the 20 months that we put you through. You know, that's a lot to come through, learn foundational computer science, iOS and Android on top of that, building apps the whole way. You guys are going to be leaving here with several apps to show off to potential employers and everything like that. It's a lot that they go through, and we definitely focus on making solid developers that are able to adapt and adjust in the real world. And we try to make sure that they at least have empathy for design. So like, you know, Adam was saying, they know what when something needs to look good, and they can find the tools and utilize it. And I think if you look at the apps are all presentable, and that's another thing. If you go to any other computer science school and look at what some of those guys are putting out, no. If they're putting out anything at all, oh, burn. I didn't say that. You can't say that stuff. All right.